Okay. Well, welcome to the Indigenous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I have one of our tribal liaisons, Mytegia Lee, with us today. And we're going to be talking about something that's come up a lot in the discovery and just the work that our tribal liaisons have been doing. So this topic is barriers to banking and access to capital, specifically with rural and tribal communities and entrepreneurs. So this is a topic that I know Mytegia is very passionate about, and she's also just encountered a lot of the barriers and needs that exist. And so she wanted to come on here and talk about it. So thanks for being with us, Mytegia. If you could just introduce yourself in case people listening don't already know who you are, and then we'll get into the discussion.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mytegia Lee. I'm with Southwest Native Assets Coalition as an executive director and am also field liaison for UNM's Rainforest Innovations program for their Tribal Entrepreneurial Enhancement Program. And I'm a farmer, a rancher, silversmith, mother, lover, giver, doer, waymaker. So come from the Navajo community of Manuelito, Quinhuajon, for those of you guys that are Navajo and understand Navajo. My clanships would be Ashin, Bashichin, Tkabahi Dashiche, Ado Bilagana Dashinel, and Kiani Dasha, Kiani being my dad, paternal, sorry. So yeah, a little bit about myself, yes.
Thank you, Mytegia. So you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. You have a background in like the banking industry. You're currently doing a lot of financial literacy training through your organization, Southwest Native Assets Coalition. And you often talk about just the different barriers that exist regarding access to capital and banking for individuals in your community. And I've spoken with banks, and I think there are certain organizations wanting to help make those meet those needs and make those barriers less but there's still like a lot of work needs to be done. So I'm wondering if you can just kind of share your experience, what you've experienced regarding those barriers of access to capital and banking, and then also kind of what others have shared with you.
Well, first off, directly from my clients, folks that I've met with, individuals that are out in these tribal communities, they don't have very many banking options to begin with. They're living in rural communities where, again, anybody that we work with is about 2 hours out. They're 2 hours out from being near a Walmart. They're 2 hours out from being next to a city like Albuquerque or Farmington, Gallup, Flagstaff. They're in all of these communities where there is no banking. And if there is banking, it isn't a credit union. So when you're banking with a large name bank and they have their policies set into place, a lot of their policies can also be barriers. So just the forefront of all of it is just the accessibility. If an individual has a language barrier and they go into a bank and there's not an individual that's able to sit down with them and tell them exactly what paperwork it is that they're needing in order to set up a bank account, they're not really going to understand what to do or where to go. And that's one thing that we saw a lot of in the Gallup area and surrounding, because we had so many folks that were on fixed income that needed to have a checking account because they were told, hey, we're not going to be able to send you a paper check for your Social Security benefits or whatever benefits you're receiving and getting. You have to have some type of a checking account in order for us to bank you. And nobody knew where to go. So what did they do? The floodgates started opening for the Gallup area. At one point, you would see a line wrapped around the whole building of Wells Fargo or wrapped around the whole building of Bank of America. And me being in lending, I would go to the bank for a change order, thinking it was probably only going to be 30 minutes, and that would easily turn into 3 or 4 hours of just waiting. And that was in a commercial line. So I can imagine how long it was taking individuals as a consumer, regular consumer, going into a bank to try to just check out their money. And most times I hear clients tell me that they don't know what their checking account is for. They don't know what fees they're getting charged. They just go with whatever is suggested to them, and they're just trusting in that fact that they think that they're going to get what they need. And then we have a lot of individuals that are dealing with overdrafts and whatnot because their checking account wasn't explained to them. They weren't explained that they would be charged for withdrawal fees, or that they would be charged a statement fee, or what the associations were as far as overdraft and so on and so forth, or having even been victims of fraud, identity theft, their debit cards being used, it being over processed, and then they get hit with all these fees. And then all of a sudden the banks tell them, we're going to close your account. Where else are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? So those are some of the things that I've seen just right off the bat. And I've worked in banking as well. So I have seen all of it. I have seen the overdrafts. I have, worked with my bank leadership to say, hey, you know what, we need to forgive these fees. This is far too much. They're on fixed income, or they're little and low income and lower income, to where they really can't afford to pay that $44 overdraft fee that they were hit with several times because they didn't understand that that's how their checking account worked. So it was always me being the having the uncomfortable conversation with the individuals and also the leadership. But it was just, again, the accountability and the process of saying, hey, you know what, we will forgive you these fees this time, but this is how your checking account works. This is what we're going to do for you. And even going the extra mile to say, this checking account that you're set up with doesn't fit the needs that you have, so let's move you to this checking account where there are no fees, and there is no minimum account balance requirement, or we're not going to allow you to overdraw on this account, or maybe get a savings account just for you to get your direct deposit from Social Security is better for you, or just to put it in there. And again, we're talking about entrepreneurs. So a lot of the times I would see folks come in and they're depositing a check that they got for their pottery or the jewelry that they were making, and just simply making the suggestion of letting them, did you know that you could set up a business account for this? And it would be easier for you because um, you have all your personal items that you're purchasing here. What we could do is set up a business account for you on this side, and you could deposit all your checks in there. All your expenses as far as your material, travel, any and everything that you're doing will automatically show up in the business account. So some of your accounting is being taken care of by tracking it in a separate account than your personal account, and we're not making a mess of that for you to be able to say, okay, I need to sit down with an accountant and file my taxes. Or you're going for a business loan. A lot of the times we have folks that want to go for a business loan, but we have so many banks that require traditional banking practices. You have to have banking activity for over 6 months to a year, 2 years. If you're going to establish a line of credit, the same thing. They want to know that your checking account has a revolving, and that the activity is current and it's revolving, that they're going to see that consistency, and that it's going to be a sound judgment for them, because a lot of the times what they're looking at is stability, ability, and willingness. I'm telling you the 3 big secrets for what's out there. And stability is the time frame of, okay, how long have they been doing the silversmithing? How long has Jenny Watson been doing her jewelry sets, and how often does she sell them? And if we do give her a $5,000 loan for her materials, can she pay it back? Can she afford to pay it back? Has she had any overdrafts? What's the banking activity looking like? And that's where we struggle. And that's where it clashes, because in our tribal communities, it's education. That's all it is. If the banks are going to bank individuals in these tribal communities, sit down with them, educate them, offer free sessions, or take that time before you're opening a checking account and say, are they older? Do they have language barriers? And are they on lower, or fixed income? What does that activity look like? If I just stick in with this account because I'm trying to meet my sales goals, because every banker has a sales goal, right? You have to about 30 checking accounts a month in order for you to not get fired. You're in your 90-day probationary period. So you're over there opening up whatever checking account. And we don't want to sell somebody on something they don't need. We need to be putting people with what they do need and what fits their budget and what is viable for them. And then at the same time, we want to push it back on the consumer, right? And say, well, it's your fault. You didn't understand it. You're the one that signed the paperwork. Did they understand it? That's where Consumer Financial Protection Bureau comes into play. Folks have their rights, but again, they don't understand that. So when we educate them and we say, hey, Anna, if we open you this checking account, we're not charging you a monthly service fee. We're not charging you a bank statement fee. But do you have smartphone capabilities? Does your phone have a setup to where we can download the app for you right now? We can make you a username and a password, and we could go from there. Furthermore, we have a lot of folks that don't have email addresses, but nobody asks them, do you want me to set you up an email address? Do you want me to help you with this? A lot of the times we're too busy in the hustle and bustle. We just want to get in and out the door. So I think that it's all of that. It's slowing down enough to explain items to individuals when you are in the banking realm or the finance realm. And then as a consumer, educating yourself enough to know what your responsibilities are and to make sure that you understand, is this loan or is this checking account um, something that I can understand and something that I know that I can comprehend and it fits what my needs are. So I think that's a little bit on it. I might have just explained everything in a minute.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think, it also comes down to like a individual case basis, like
Mhm,
different cases, different people experience different barriers and different
mhm,
needs. So that's why it's important for the bank to really know their customer and the people who are
mhm,
banking with them, which I think some banks do a good job of that, and others not so much. There was
mhm.
another specific barrier that you encountered, um, like about a month ago or so that I
With
know
the
other,
residency,
yes, and
yes.
I'm wondering if you can speak about that because I don't think a lot of people are aware like some of these just policy barriers
Mhm,
that tribal and rural communities face that living in an urban setting we really aren't aware of and we don't experience, but when you
mhm,
get out to the rural communities, some of these policies can become a major barrier for individuals, but also businesses. So I'm wondering if you
mhm.
can kind of talk about that address barrier and instance
Yeah,
that
the rural
you.
addressing system. Okay, so all my clients have run into this. This is something that I've recorded and have done testimonials on to show banks, to show businesses, organizations that it is bias. It is a form of discrimination when you're telling an individual that you cannot service them because of their address. That you're telling them that because of where they live, you cannot service them. In tribal communities, a lot of the times we have a rural addressing system. It's an RA number that is set up at the side of the road to give you an identification for where you live. Because we live in these rural communities and we're off county roads and we're on reservation, we use a rural addressing system to identify ourselves. And a lot of the times we have these local chapter houses that make it difficult for individuals to even obtain a chapter letter or statement that says, this is the rural addressing number for this individual that resides in this community. Other times when you go to the county, they may or may not give you a letter that states that that's your rural address. Um, when it comes back down to it, a lot of these folks that are living in rural communities can't just go to the New Mexico Gas Company or to Gallup Joint Utilities or to, Continental Divide Electric and say, hey, I need proof of addressing. Why? Because they don't even have electric or running water, or they don't have, these resources that you would get inner city. Inner city, you sign your lease, your physical address is on your lease, right? You get your utility set up, everything is on that lease, even your cell phone, your information is on that contract, your insurance information is on that contract. Well, when you're in a rural community, in order for you to get your mail, you set up a PO box. And a lot of these places will tell you right off the bat, we can't accept a PO box addressing number for you to be able to get proof of residency. So when you're going to go purchase a phone, they will not put your rural addressing address on your contract because you have to have a mailing address for them to bill you a statement. And a lot of the times, even now, you can't qualify for a line of credit with a credit card company like Capital One or any of these credit card companies because they want a physical address, but they're not understanding in rural communities there's a rural addressing system, and because they don't understand how to use that, they push their clients away. And again, that's discrimination. It's based off of the addressing system. I had that happen to many of my clients. And I've even told these banks a lot of the times when I'm able to sit down with them is, when you're writing a policy that leaves out a big chunk of individuals that you're trying to service, that creates another big barrier for them, not just for banking, but for their access to capital, whether it's a personal loan or a business loan, a line of credit, a vehicle, any and everything that they're trying to access with whoever that entity is that they're trying to work with. That barrier is automatically made. And for that individual to try to jump through the wind, the fire, and the rain to get a rural address notification for them to use as proof of residency, that creates a very, very hard task for them. You go to motor vehicle, and even motor vehicle will ask you, do you have a letter that shows your physical address? How are you supposed to even get a driver's license if the local chapter houses or the leadership and whatnot hasn't fully addressed that, to say, we're not going to make it hard for you. We're not going to ask you for your firstborn in order to get the credentials that you need in order for you to get that proof of address. My personal experience was going in to conduct business for a rental. And when I gave all my information, I gave my driver's license, I gave my debit card, and then I was told, first off, you can't use your debit card. It has to be a large name credit card. I teach financial literacy. So in my mind, I tell everybody, if you don't need to get a credit card, don't have one. If you don't have the money to purchase something, it's probably because you don't need it. Is that repetition of debt it starts from thinking that you need something and then you don't need it, and it's easy to snowball debt. So that was my biggest reason for why I wouldn't even get a credit card, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I don't have the money for it, I don't need it. Use your debit card, because if you have the money, pay for it. So I went in. That was the first thing. They told me that they needed to have a MasterCard or some type of a credit card that they could put on file. That was the first thing. And I told them, okay, well, my debit card has a MasterCard logo. Look at that. And it's probably more secure because it's my debit card. And I think that upset the individual enough to where she says, well, and at the same rate, we can't even accept your debit card, because we do accept debit cards for folks as long as their physical address matches their debit card information. And I'm like, but how would you know that? How would you even know that? So that was another thing. We don't have our physical address on our debit card. And my driver's license shows my physical address, and it's a rural address. It is a rural address to where if you were to look it up, it would be off of a county road onto a dirt road, and it would be a rural addressing system. And she says, well, I need a utility bill. And I told her, I said, well, this specific address, we use solar panels and we have a well. So I don't have a statement for you. And she tells me, okay, well, if you don't, then I can't accept your debit card, and I can't, you know what, I don't feel comfortable even giving you a rental. So cut me off at that. It just told me right off the bat that they would not do business with me because they couldn't understand the rural addressing system. So that was a shock to me, because in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I know my CFPB rules, rights, all of this. And I asked her, I said, okay, so because you don't understand the clients you're servicing and the rural addressing system of where I live, you're telling me that you don't feel comfortable allowing me to rent a vehicle when I've rented vehicles from this specific company numerous of times, maybe once a month even. And that was it. That was just her automatic response, was that she did not want to do it. And so that was a shocker for me. Immediately, I was like, okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is reach out to their leadership and ask them, what? Because what do we do? What do I do? And if that's happened to me, I guarantee that that's happened to more than 100, 200, maybe even a couple thousand of tribal community members that have gone there. I mean, when you take your vehicle to the insurance company and you need to rent a vehicle because your vehicle is getting repaired, and then they tell you to go pick up a rental, you get there and then they tell you that they can't give you a vehicle because your rural addressing system. And I'm sure that's happened. I've heard quite a bit of people disgruntled at the same time. And in my mind, my first thought was, I don't think that these folks are really knowledgeable on what they can do. So my next step was, I'm going to go to the CFPB website and I'm going to upload my experience, and I'm going to give them information. And the next time I went back to that location after speaking with an individual that was outside of the personal office, there was a sign that was posted that even said, if you bring in a utility bill and it's past due, we will not service you. And even that, I'm like, you can't tell somebody, you can't give them a rental because their bill's past due. It's a personal situation. And billing statements don't come out every day. So maybe that's all they had. They were up to date by the time they brought you that statement, but that's all they had. So there are a lot of things that can hinder um, folks in tribal communities when it comes to anything they're trying to conduct. It could be a rental, banking, even just lending, or you can imagine what's out there where they require that physical addressing and that be the outcome. It's really, it's boggling to me. I would have never thought that even right now, this day and age, with what I do and where I'm at, that I would have personally experienced that. So my message to large name companies, banks, organizations that come into these border towns and rural communities, if you're going to do business there, do some research, make your policies flexible, because we're fully, in tribal communities, we are fully capable of adhering to policies. Um, Obviously, there is money to be made there, because if there were no money to be made there, they wouldn't be banks there, or stores, or resources that are out there for us to rely on. So my ask is just that if you're going to work with those communities, do your research a little bit more in order to ensure that you're willing to accept rural addressing information based on what credentials that individual is able to provide. I've even heard some of my clients say that they were turned down for certain resources that were out there because getting, again, proof of residency is really difficult to get. If you happen to come across a disgruntled employee at the chapter house that's telling you that you can't use it for certain reasons, you cannot obtain proof of residency, and you can't even have somebody write you a statement, or memo saying, I know Mytegia, and she does live at 3 da 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 da, White Mountain Road on, or wherever that may be. And that's the way the addressing system works in tribal communities. So I do know some banks that have adapted their policies to the communities that they're trying to work with. And I do give them a big round of applause for that. And they're the credit unions that have said, if you do have a tribal enrollment card, or you do have a CIB, and you do have to use a rural addressing system in order for us to check up or to open your checking account, banking account, we'll accept that. We will take whatever you have and use that, because it is a form of identification in your tribal community. So for that matter, if we're going to serve this tribal community, we will accept those items. So that's always exciting for me when I do hear that they are making those changes and that they are understanding how these tribal communities do work, and they are trying to have better practices when they are working with tribal community members.
You've kind of already addressed this next question that I have, but just basically, what are your thoughts on solutions from a company perspective? You kind of touched on that, like definitely, educating themselves on the communities they're serving and making sure their policies align with the customer's needs. Do you have any other recommendations for solutions on that end? And then also maybe potential solutions for the customers, or some things that they can do to maybe advocate for themselves and help improve the services and help improve the policies of those services to kind of align and serve rural communities better. What are your thoughts on that?
Voting season is coming up. Everybody's going to be voting here pretty soon. And my biggest message to all my tribal community members, anybody that's dealing with rural addressing, even if it's not tribal and you're in a rural community, and these individuals that are wanting to be reelected need to understand that they have to advocate for us in order to be the change makers in this, because they have a lot to do with the policies. They have a lot to do with the way that things go for their communities that they're working for, that they're saying that they're representing. So when you're getting ready to vote for somebody, think of that. Does this person understand my tribal community? Have they taken the time to communicate with us and come here and understand what our needs are? Your due diligence, and at your same time, as tribal community members, be proactive. Go to these community events and whatnot where you are allowed to make a public comment, where you are allowed to participate in, like Gallup has their meetings. The Navajo Nation has certain meetings that they do have. I'm very proactive in letting people know my thoughts and my concerns. There are videos out there. There are reports that are out there. There's things that we do actively to let our leadership know. And I think that it is a big message to our tribal leaders, and it is a big message to our local leaders to say, with the county commissioner's office, understand that it is already difficult to work with our tribal leadership to try to get some form of documentation, because they want some type of a letterhead to say, okay, this community is near McKinley County. They do need to get some form of or letter, statement, a written document that is notarized, that does have a letterhead that says that this individual does reside there. Because even if we were go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, let's say that you have an allotment or you have a home site, does that individual really have the means to turn around? And again, I'm going to say this as a message to everybody. I live in the Manuelito community. So for me to just drop everything I'm doing and take 2 hours to drive to Crown Point and possibly not meet with somebody, pay for fuel, take time off of work, sit there, idle, and then take 2 hours back, which is going to be a whole day, to be told that they can't give me proof of addressing. Does that sound fair? Because they'll tell me you're enrolled with Eastern Agency, so you're going to need to go to Eastern Agency to do that. We need to come up with a better solution. McKinley County, I do understand that they don't have anything to do with allotments or tribal trust, which is where a lot of folks do live and reside. But, just going the extra mile to say, if you do need proof of residency, come in, we can help you with that. Or our tribal leadership, one-stop shop. Don't make somebody do a cartwheel if they can't do a cartwheel just to get that residency letter. Don't chapter houses, don't go in. Bureaucracy is probably one of the worst things that you can involve yourself in, to just say, well, I have the upper hand. Because of that, I'm going to say no. No, let's make allowing accessibility easier on all aspects. This is for tribal communities, urban communities, everywhere, because we all need it. We all need proof of address. And the insurance company is going to ask for it. The phone company is going to ask for it. Let's all work together collectively as, the consumer and the business and the organization and the leadership to say, hey, I think if a lot of people are talking about the fact that they're not able to get a rural addressing letter or something, what can we do collectively to nip this in the bud to where it's a thing of the past that we can laugh about in a year from now, after the election is done, and say, hey, this is probably one of the main things that we should have taken care of years ago, because we have so many people out there that are dealing with that. My tribal leadership, please hear this, know this, that we rely on you heavily. I do understand that you guys are busy. We do understand that there are a lot of things on your plate, but when it's something that every tribal community member needs, not just entrepreneurs, not just, businesses, not just Tega, I'm not the only person that needs it, but you've got 500,000 tribally enrolled community members with Navajo specifically. And I wonder how many of them need that, or members at Zuni or Acoma, Laguna, Jemez, wherever you're at. We've got 23 tribes in New Mexico and 17 in Arizona. So if we have that many individuals that are struggling with rural addressing systems, let's make it easier to get those documents that we need, so that we can just achieve everyday things that folks do all the time. It shouldn't be that difficult. But I almost grew a white hair being told no that day. I'm like, what is going on? So that would be my little spiel on that. As individuals, ask your leadership who you're voting for. They want your vote. So say, hey, you know what? This is a topic of discussion that keeps coming up. I do. And then as businesses, what are you really asking this individual? Sometimes all they do have is that PO box, and all their letters, all their statements, everything that they have is getting sent to that PO box. If that says Manuelito, they probably are really living where they're telling you they're living. Um, and a lot of these post offices are set up in these rural communities that we live in. Like mine is set up in Manuelito. So that's where I get all my mail from, is my PO box. And then if anything, and they have to send a larger package, I have to go pick it up at the post office in Gallup to go, conduct whatever business I have. I have people that telling me that all the time. Why don't you just put in your physical address for FedEx? I'm like, because FedEx will not find the address. And that was another funny thing. Tesla, they were trying to give us some information on how good Tesla was. They're really good. Pretty soon, these vehicles are going to be able to drive themselves. They could self-navigate. And I said, okay, let's say you live in a rural community and you take it off of a county road. Well, that's the only problem. As soon as you hit a dirt road, it won't know anything. It'll totally go off. And I'm like, okay, all right. We still got work to do. But yes, so we're and the thing is this is something that we don't want to change, as folks that are living in rural communities. If you look at statistics for New Mexico, 75% of our roads are still not paved in New Mexico. That's a win for tribal communities, because that means that we're able to preserve our ancestral lands. We're proud of that. I am very proud of that. I'm not saying that I want the roads to be paved and be accessible. I'm just saying I want to be able to get my rural addressing acknowledged so that I can have the same accessibilities that anybody in an urban community can, or in a city.
Well, thank you, Mytegia. I always love listening to you, and I'm sure like others listening love hearing your stories and just your insight. I think you're a huge leader and advocate in your communities, which is thank you so much for coming on here to share some more of your perspective and experience. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on while we're here before we get off?
Just the message to the banks is, there's a lot of individuals that are out there that really rely on banks. I think that relationship-based products are more viable for tribal communities and the communities that folks are serving. I know that if anybody sees this podcast, more than likely they're going to know that it's tribally based. So the message is for folks that are serving tribally enrolled members. Just understand that, we're a very smart, grounded, and giving and trustworthy people. In a lot of tribal communities, a handshake is just as good as a contract. And if they're, yeah, one of the biggest things that irks me is that we always hear that you're a risk factor. You're a risk factor. Why? Because again, is it our fault that we can't obtain documents for rural addressing? No, I've stated the reason why we can't. But then again, there are always these red flags that pop up. And the first thing that you hear is you're a risk factor. You're a risk factor for your rural addressing system. You're a risk factor because you're low and lower income. I've got some success stories from folks who banks wouldn't even touch with a 10-foot pole. I had a client who was 99% debt to income ratio and just wanted to get out of debt, but was on fixed income. And this individual was not able to get help from anybody. I came in, credit score was about 530. Credit score now is 740. Gave him a $10,000 loan and never had delinquency once. My portfolio right now for all my clients that I serve, I have zero delinquency, and all of them are tribally enrolled members that are on low, lower, or fixed income. Relationship-based products that are out there for tribal community members will be successful, because if they knew that it was that difficult to access capital, whether it is for a small loan, a vehicle, business, whatever it is, even banking, if they just understood what that was and they weren't just another business transaction, they know and value that relationship. Because I've had so many of my clients come back to me when I bump into them at Walmart or the local flea market or the parade or, the local rodeos, whatever they have, because I'm always out in my community. The biggest thing I hear is thank you, thank you for helping me. Thank you for telling me that. We don't just pat them on the back after we give them one session of counseling or a lending product. I follow up with them a month from there. I'm like, okay, We set up this savings goal. We said that we wanted to do this. Where are we at with that? How far have we come? Oh, you know what, Mytegia, I put it on the back burner. I got so busy, but I'll get it done this week. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll follow up with you on Friday or Saturday. And it's letting them know that you're going to continually be there. It's letting them know that you're a relationship based entity and you're not doing it to get in their way. You're not doing it to make them feel defeated. But when you give somebody hope and you give somebody encouragement and you're understanding them and they feel like they're seen, they feel like they're wanted, they feel like they're needed, they feel as if they're not just another business transaction, that is going to ensure, and this is a statistic I heard even way back when I started in corporate America, is that 78% of clients will go where they're wanted and needed. And I could tell you that 100% of my clients feel as if they have come to where they are wanted and needed. And if I can't help them, I'm going to refer them to somebody else that I know personally with other partner organizations will have the resources, ability, capability, willingness, and desire to want to help them. I'm not going to refer my client to someone who I know is going to, take advantage of them, treat them bad, or they're going to have a bad experience. My thought is that I want to keep the business where it's appreciated. And I feel the same way. I tell everybody I work very hard. So if I'm going to go to a restaurant and it's just not what I wanted, I probably won't return. But it's only because I work really hard too. We all want to feel valued. We all want to feel as if we go somewhere we're wanted, we're needed. And it could be as simple as a handshake. It could be as simple as a smile. It could be as simple as, just giving somebody valuable information. And like what we're doing with the entrepreneurial enhancement program, we sit down with folks, we don't charge them. I sit down with folks and I tell them all the time, before you go to a bank or before you even consider me, I charge 5% interest on the relationship based lending that we do up to $10,000. But I do know that Kiva, Lisk, RCAC, all of these other products that are out there are at 1% or no interest, which is better for you because you're just starting out. They could give you technical assistance, they could give you training, and I could still mentor you. I just don't want you to commit to something if I know that there's a product that's out there that's better than what I have. It's not about the fact that I'm trying to grow a loan portfolio or I'm trying to gain that client. It's about the simple fact that that integrity that I do have is going to come to the forefront and say, what do I feel is best for you? And it doesn't mean that you don't have to do business with that person. I've had people tell me, you know what, I don't care if you charge 5%. I'm not going anywhere else, that this is where I'm staying. As long as they know that, and as long as you know that, folks are going to be able to sleep at night. You're going to be able to sleep at night. It goes a whole lot longer in distance in business when that person tells 10 people that they know, hey, I went and I sat down with so and so over at the credit union right downtown. And I didn't think that they were going to help me, but they helped me. And that person's going to go in and they're going to say, hey, I was referred to your bank by so and so. They let me know that you're a really good individual, really good at working with people. You guys will go up to bat for me. Can you help me? And they have the same experience. They're going to go out and they're going to tell more than 10 people. So that's just word of mouth of people knowing how good of a business that is, how good of a resource that is, how good of a partnership that is, a friendship, anything that you're doing that is out there that you do with integrity and you do with a desire, passion. And when that person feels visible, it'll be lucrative to everybody that's involved. And that's just my message to any and everybody. And as consumers, as tribal community members, my fellow tribal community members, remember your due diligence. We come from communities where we're taught to have humility, to have shame, to have honor, integrity. These are things that we're taught growing up. Your due diligence as well is making sure that you do commit to the things that you are venturing for, whether it's, a small signature loan, a business loan, a vehicle, educate yourself on that. Do your very best to make sure that you're committed to those responsibilities that you're willing to take on as well, because a lot of that goes hand in hand. If you don't understand something, don't go for it until you do, because at the end of that same scenario, the reason why we hear a lot of no's is because of all of the negatives that have happened. So it's both. It's a win and a lose for all of us involved. But I think that, my fellow tribal community members, do your due diligence, research things and do your part. Same with the businesses and anybody that we're working with, do your part in your research, and we'll all be conducive, collective, and viable to each other. So that's my message.
It basically comes down to, I think, two of the things that you're a huge advocate for, which is education first and then relationship building. So I think, at least for me, that's what I took away from this is people and organizations who are serving rural and tribal communities need to educate themselves and their policies to serve those communities. But then
Yes.
in turn, rural community members and tribal members need to also educate themselves, whether it's in financial literacy or like how to advocate for themselves. And then we need to have that relationship based banking and
Mm-hmm.
financial literacy training, which I know you provide, but definitely,
Yes.
hoping that more organizations will start taking that approach, especially when it comes to serving these rural and tribal community members.
Yes. And I think there's much to know and understand. I even had a bank come to me and ask me to do cultural competency training for them for better practices on how to work with tribal community members because they knew what they wanted to do. They knew how they wanted to move forward. They knew that they were failing. They knew that they could do better. And post all of that, they're excited, they're happy, they're out there, and their main takeaway from it was we didn't know that, we didn't understand that. And at the same time, I'm out here on the other side with tribal communities that I do work with and offer financial literacy that is cultural relevant, that is heritage based, with the message that says, hey, this is our history, this is how things are, but this is your responsibility as a consumer, and this is how you can go into understanding your finances. It doesn't matter if you're fixed income, low income, lower income, and or if you're successful. The fact of the matter is that we all have money traumas. We all have certain traumas that are put in place, whether it's from tribal communities, it being genocides, systemic traumas and barriers versus, what another individual is dealing with. We all have traumas. And a lot of the times we do not identify those traumas until we sit down with somebody that has that knowledge and is able to help us understand what that looks like and what we could do to fix that. And there will never be two stories that are the same. I've been working in finances for 20 years now, and there's not never been one situation where I could say that it was just like Anna's story or Robert's story, or there's just no comparison. Every single scenario has been different, but that's the beauty of it, is knowing how diverse people are, how diverse their situations can be. But the biggest reward for me at the end of all of it is the success of that individual. I get so happy for anybody that is successful. And we've seen a lot of those success stories, whether they've opened their storefronts, whether they've, achieved a debt-free lifestyle, or whether it was just increasing their credit score or purchasing a home, purchasing a vehicle, whatever it was. That success story is going to last them their lifetime. That is a legacy. That is, something that is far beyond just the act. So in my mind, I feel as if, this all of what we're doing collectively, on all fronts, is leaving that ladder down for future generations. And I won't just say 7 or 8 generations, because we have so many that are going to come after us. There's so many that were before us that were doing the same work that we're doing, but on a different scale, a different understanding, and a different level. And all I want to do is make sure that we're continuing to leave that window of opportunity very wide and open for any and everybody to say that, they want to be a part of that. It would be better. Strength is in numbers. So whether it's a bank or a tribal community, if we just all rally together, we all have the same idea, right? We want financial stability. We all want housing. We all want access to banking, access to capital. Let's work together and let's achieve that.
Well, thank you so much, Mytegia, for your time and your thoughts and your expertise. I think you share a lot of really valuable insight. So thank you for taking the time to come on here with me and have this discussion. I know we'll be having you on a little bit later to talk about, I think, ecosystem building. So I'm looking forward to that conversation as well.
Same here. I'm excited about all of it. I think we've got a lot of really good things that are going to be coming up and things that we're already doing. I always get excited about it because in my mind, I feel as if we're being the change that we talk about, and to be a part of something that is going to be pivotal to our communities, our families. It's exciting. Why not get excited about it? I get really emotional. Even I'm a very emotional person, you know this. But anytime I have one of my clients come back to me and tell me, you know what, I didn't know how to do this, and I do now. I believe in myself now. Like I kept second guessing myself, or a different situation of I was about to give up, and you came in, you helped me, and I was able to accelerate. And I didn't just stop there. I opened another business, or I was able to partner with so and so because of the help that you gave me, and now I'm doing this. That's all I basically am living for right now, is the success stories that are out there to say, oh my gosh, I would do a cartwheel if I could. I'm well beyond my years, but if I could do a cartwheel, I would. And in my mind, I just sit there a lot of the times. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of the work that UNM has been doing. I was reading an article just the other day of some of the stuff that has come to fruition with the technology and the research that's happening there. And just the fact that UNM stood up to bat and stood up and came in and decided to be a waymaker and making sure that these tribal communities had access to that ecosystem, to resources, to liaisons such as myself and the other liaisons that are out there doing the same amazing work. So a big thank you to UNM for thinking about tribal communities in New Mexico, and for being a big advocate, cheerleader, and supporter for any and everything in tribal communities. I look forward to the furthered success of UNM and the furthered success of the tribal communities that do gain access to the resources that are available through UNM's Rainforest Innovations Program and UNM in general.
I do too. I look forward to all that also. So thank you so much for working with us on these initiatives. And we'll put your bio and like link to Southwest Native Assets Coalition in the description, so that if people want to get in contact with you, they can.
Okay, great.
Right.
I look forward to hearing from everybody. Thank you, Cecilia.
Thanks, Mytegia.
Mm.